to drive your career, not just ride along? You're in the right place. Welcome to the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. I'm Simone E. Morris, your host and career strategist, here to give you the roadmap. Each week, we're cutting through the noise with strategies, stories, and insights to get you back in control. Your career clarity starts right here. Welcome to this week's episode of the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. Today, we're joined by Keith Willis, founder of Core Management Training. Keith helps pharmaceutical and life sciences companies turn managers into leaders who drive real results. His journey took him from U.S. Army officer to award-winning roles at Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, and Bristol Myers Squibb. Now he's building Never Look for a Job Again. I love that, Keith. Helping professionals create opportunities instead of waiting for them. Keith, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Simone. Really happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. I always go to the place of when you were growing up, what did you want to be?
I had no earthly idea.
I wanted to be a teacher. Not that you asked me, but I wanted to be a teacher. So you don't know what you wanted to be when you were growing up?
Yeah, well, I think there were two things that I thought about. One was being a lawyer, and
Okay.
the other one was being a journalist. And when I got to college, they had this thing called the journalism qualifying exam, and I couldn't pass it because I couldn't type. I did all right on the grammar exam, and then I decided that I was a sociology major, and I decided I was going to major in sociology. And as you know, there aren't any jobs in
There
sociology, and
sure
I didn't,
aren't.
I didn't want to be a social worker.
Unless you have unless you have a master's degree, that psychology, sociology, you need extra higher education for those I have found.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. You're making me think of when I was in high school and I took a typing class, and my first semester I got a D, and then I was like, a D. And so now I can type. I'm not using it, but I can type pretty fast. So that oh, that's very interesting. So tell us what we didn't hear in the bio. Tell us a little bit about your current work and what you're currently doing.
Yeah, so currently, I own my own company. I'm an entrepreneur now and work with primarily pharmaceutical companies. That's where I spent the majority of my career. It's been an interesting transition. Uh, Came in from vacation one day. My manager was trying to get a hold of me. I had interviews and a bunch of other things that were going on. And I remember thinking, this doesn't sound good. And sure enough, it wasn't. She let me know that my position was being eliminated. And
Mm.
so the good news was I had about a 3 month head start, give or take. I believe this was in July, and then my position was eliminated in October. So I did some interviewing, and it was evident at that point in time that, ageism is a thing. I was a little naive.
Mm.
I picked up on some things, and I had interviewed for some other roles earlier, things like we roll up our sleeves and work here, and those type of key buzzwords, I think went right over my head. And then I made the decision I was going to go out on my own. It always had an entrepreneurial bug. I
Mhm.
did the Sprint phone cards. I did
You're
a little
dating
bit of
yourself, Sprint.
Amway. Yeah.
You did. But listen, I know I remember Sprint and I remember Amway, but we got these different generations going on now.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so I did that, a little bit of real estate. And I remember telling my wife, I said, I've always wanted to own my business and I needed to do it. If it didn't work out, I could always go back into the corporate world.
Yep.
And so she gave me her blessing. So 7 years later, here I am. There are times when I ask myself, what were you thinking?
I listen, I'm 10 years in and I completely understand.
I completely understand. So I want to go back to something you said. I have two questions that come to mind for me, Keith. The first one is tell our audience what ageism looks like from a career standpoint, because you said there's ageism is real. So for those people who don't know what it looks like from your perspective, what did you mean when you said that?
Yeah, so there's a point in time in your career where I won't say you're a liability, but there are two things that are going on. And as I've gotten older, it's kind of you never change. You're you, if you know what I mean.
Mhm.
Me at my age now versus when I was 25, not much different other than you're smarter. At that point, you can maximize the amount of dollars that you're making. I can't remember what the age is. It's like from 40 to 60, something like that. And that means you're on the higher end of the pay scale. Opportunities for promotion, those type of things don't exist. And people are looking at you as maybe you lost a step. Maybe you don't have the knowledge, maybe you're not willing to change, embrace technology, those type of things. And so there's a perception that even in certain roles, if you're a director, depending on which organization that you're working for, companies are smaller and leaner now. So people have to roll up their sleeves and quote unquote work. Back in the day, people used to have an admin. You don't have admin anymore. Now, you check your own email, you do your own copy. So all of those things play into that when you get to a certain age, no one's going to tell you up front into your face that I'm not going to hire you because I think you're too old.
Right.
But the reality of it is that there are certain organizations they won't hire you once you hit a certain age. In fact, there was a company I worked for. There was a joke: "Don't get gray hair."
Mm.
So
Mhm.
don't be. I would just tell people don't be naive. When you hit 50, don't be surprised if you get a knock on the door. I remember when I was downsized, they sent out a list and it had everybody's position. I can't remember if it was birthdays or ages. And the ideal behind it was for you to think that you weren't being discriminated against because of your age.
Interesting.
The interesting thing is, me and another guy, we were, both around 50 something, and both of our positions had been eliminated, and we were supporting brands, training team. We were running training teams, and the brands that we were supporting were multi-billion dollar teams. And I remember my manager doing an interview with the candidate that we were looking to bring in, she made the comment, somebody asked what was the vision because of these changes. And she said, well, if our structure is the same as it, is now, then we will have made a mistake. So in other words, they were bringing in one person to take both of our roles.
Mm.
And then the thought was, I think she was going to bring in senior managers who make less money, and so she could pay them less. And so the work wasn't going to disappear. The responsibility wasn't going to disappear. It was a good way for them to clear payroll and pay people less money with the same amount of responsibility with both of them reporting into a director. So it was one of those things where it was, how did I miss that?
Mhm.
I'll tell people, in certain roles in certain organizations, they will push you up through the organization, and I'll look at that role and say, that's similar to other organizations. That role is going to disappear in a couple of years. And
Mm.
I've worked with clients, and I'll tell them, you need to be thinking about an exit strategy. You need to be thinking about what's going to be next or where you can go, because at some point they're going to make a decision that your role's not needed anymore. So it's an interesting dichotomy. I think it happens to every generation because we all start out in the same place. We're young, we're vibrant, we have all of these different ideas about what we're going to do. And then the reality sits, corporate will put you in a box and tell you you can't do this or you can't do that. And then all of a sudden you're stuck. So you have people that 50s and 60s, which is pretty young. I meet a lot of people like me. They started their own businesses. They're involved in a lot of different things, activities, and those type of things. And I would just say, looking back on my career, there are a lot of things I would have done differently,
Mm.
knowing what I know now. So that's the piece
Exactly.
around ageism that people oftentimes are not aware of until it's too late, because all of a sudden you're forced, and it can be a good thing. I like to say my last company that we left each other.
Yep.
I don't know if I would have ever left, but I think it was God's way of pushing me out of the nest and say, look, I have something else for you to do.
Yeah, I love that you share that change isn't always a bad thing and that change can be an opportunity for a next career chapter. Now, let me ask you, you mentioned, you said something, I, why didn't I know this? And I want to bear with me for a minute. So this show is about being in the driver's seat. And I can think of many moments in my career where I was in the passenger seat where, I was not as focused and strategic and intentional about my career outcomes. So you made me think of that when you said, how did I miss that? So I want you to think about, Keith, the passenger seat and the driver's seat. And so think about you being in the passenger seat and when did you realize that you were in the driver's seat for your career? Can you think about the first moment that happened for you?
It's a it's an interesting question because I think at times that we are in the driver's seat and other times we're in the passenger seat, and that switch is easy to happen and you miss the signs. I realized that I was in the driver's seat. I had transitioned from the military into pharmaceuticals. I was a top selling sales representative. In fact, that year I finished number three out of 640 sales representatives. And I had a chance to go into the home office and help with a training class. And so you were going to be a facilitator helping out. And I remember one of my peers, we shared the territory that we were in. We split that territory in half. He had one part of the city, I had the other part of the city. And not only were we friends, but he was a mentor. And I remember him telling me, you need to take advantage of this opportunity when you go into the home office. You need to spend some time, meet with people. And this was very foreign. I mean, at this point, I'd been out of the military maybe 2.5, 3 years. So I didn't understand the politics and the things that maybe you should do. And I remember sitting down with him and we were having a discussion around people that you might want to meet with. And so I took that opportunity to meet with a few people. And I remember one of the people I met with was a sales VP. And I remember after my meeting with her that she called the director of sales training and she said, I think Keith would be a good fit for sales training. That led to a bunch of other things. At the time, I wasn't looking to relocate to the New Jersey, Pennsylvania area. We were living in downriver Detroit. My boss's boss didn't want to push me forward for opportunities, but because my wife is from Maryland, she agreed that if this opportunity was available, that we could move because it's 2 hours from here to Baltimore. So that was a lot better than Detroit to Baltimore, which was substantially a longer drive. And so a lot of things happened from there. I went in, I was a sales training manager, I became a district manager, and then I left eventually. That company went to another company as a director. So that put me in the driver's seat. I had another manager. He was actually 2 levels above me, but he used to ask me when I went to this other company, and he would say, "What do you want to do next?" And I had been there maybe a year. I had no idea what I wanted to do next,
Mhm.
and so I threw some ideas out to him. I said, "Here's a role I would be interested in," and he said that, "Well, I'm having dinner with that sales VP tonight." And it just so happened to be I was going out to California. This is the Western Business Unit, and I was going to be going out to California to run a training class. So I had a conversation with that sales VP. I went out to California, ran the class, had a conversation with her about this role that was going to open up. And I remember I hadn't been home 24 hours, and she called me and she said, "Make sure that you post for that position." So there were three of us. We all interviewed for, there were about two or three roles. We all interviewed for all of the roles. I remember one of the sales VPs that had a similar role told me, "I wish I had known. I already have my person that I'm going to fill that role with." But he said, I'll because I had to figure out the politics of how to get to see him and everything. He says, "I'll vouch for you for the position that you're interviewing for." And I landed that position as a director, and it was a great position. But here again, it was, well, two things. My manager, who was a senior level, kept asking me, the lesson here is you need to tell people what you think you might want to do, even if you don't, because they will help you explore those opportunities. And obviously you've got to do the work. You've got to do good work. People have to see you as a viable candidate, somebody that's worth promoting and all of those things. And you got to do the networking and all of that stuff. But ultimately, when you put yourself out there, that creates opportunities for you. So those are two spaces where I realized that I was in control of my career. And then we were bought by another company. And so for whatever reason, like life, things are difficult, those type of things. I think I ended up over in the passenger seat because when I reflect upon my career, I say to myself, I should have taken a right turn. And part of it is that as you get older, you have children, you have family responsibilities and all of those. And so we let those things stand in the way, or we tell ourselves the reason we can't move ahead or do something different is because family obligations and things like that. But, when I look and I reflect upon people that I've worked with, I've seen people maybe make a right turn, maybe do something, maybe they took a lateral, but
Yeah.
those things they've been able to push them up even further with and giving them opportunities within their careers. I mean, fact of the matter is that I started out as a sales rep with several folks that have been CEOs or are in senior management now.
Mhm.
So those that gets back to this whole piece of you have to be purposeful and you can't and I won't say lazy because I don't think that's fair. You can't let life get in the way of you managing one of the most important things that we do. We spend close to a third of the time that we spend on this earth working. And so it's something that we have to be a lot more diligent planning. We need to spend as much time as we spend planning vacations.
Yeah.
That's the sort of time and effort we need to put into managing our careers.
Yeah, so many good points there. And it makes me think about opportunities that I said no to. And as I reflect back on it, whether it was fear or family situations, there are game-changing things that can crop up in your career that you need to be open to and innovative around. How can I make this work? How can I negotiate it? Because I think many times it was either yes or no. There was no gray.
Right.
And
Yes.
what I know now as a coach and working with so many different people is that you can negotiate. And like to your point, you talked about sponsorship when you talked about, being ready and being open to sharing what you desire in your career with others, and then to have other people say, hey, I will vouch for you. For me, that's sponsorship. So to really hone in on uh, that as a tool for moving up in your career as well.
Yeah, the sponsorship piece is and here again it was I had sponsors and upon reflection realized, oh, these are people that are their sponsors. One of my managers, we started out in the same company the same day, and they had been in pharmaceuticals a few years before I had been, and we worked with the same company, and eventually they left. So when my friend recommended me to the company, this manager ended up being my boss's boss. And so he had influence on the hiring decision. And then I followed him. Well, he made the recommendation for the next company where I did leadership development, which got me in the door. And then he pulled me over to another company that he was at. So I followed him probably about three or four different companies. And then this senior executive in this other company had a lot to do with me getting promoted. So there has definitely been sponsorship, or even when we went through a downsizing the first time, and they got rid of half of the sales VPs, and my VP was gone also, which technically meant I didn't have a job. I never looked at it that way
Mhm.
because the senior VP of sales told me, I want you to go see so and so, who also was a sponsor and said he's got a role for you. So here again, because of sponsorship, I ended up in a good position, building relationships, working with people. And ironically, the same person, when I interviewed in another company for the role, he was my boss's boss. He was the final interview. So
Yeah.
here again, it's all about relationships and people that
Yeah.
but credibility of the work. And I think, when I reflect back, the miss for me was being more purposeful in cultivating that relationship, because in that company there were opportunities where I probably could have risen higher. And because of politics and other things, I decided that I was going to leave. And the last company I worked for, probably from a cultural standpoint, was not a match for me. And I should have stayed where I was, and probably would have gotten more opportunities if I had stayed and cultivated some of those relationships.
Probably a lot of lessons from those turns that don't work the way we intend them to work. Let me ask you, Keith, what is your formula for owning your career? In other words, what are the key ingredients that one needs, from your perspective, to advance successfully in their careers?
I think the number one thing is know thyself.
Mm.
I remember graduating from college, and my father was having a conversation with a friend of myself, and he said, to get ahead in the world, you need to be different. And I remember him saying that being black is not being different. And I thought at the time I knew what he meant by that. And it's been years later where I've had some time to ponder and think about that conversation. And here's the reality. We are each unique individuals when we're born into this world. We all bring something that's different. We all have different talents and gifts. Ironically, we spend our lifetime trying to fit in, do what everybody else does, and just be a part of the crowd. You can't stand out if you're a part of the crowd.
Mhm.
And being different means being your most authentic self and being the unique you, that there's only one of you, and there's no point in trying to be somebody else because there's only one of you. And if you can do that to the best of the degree that you can do that, you're going to be far more successful than if you don't do that. So I think that's the number one ingredient, and that can be a lifetime, figuring out who you are, what makes you tick, what you like, those type of things. And then I think the other part of that is set some goals. Sometimes you don't hit the goals you have and the objectives, and part of that is the long view. What do I think I want to do? What do I think I want to experience if I look back 20 or 30 years from now? Oftentimes when I'm working with people, that's a question I'll ask, because it takes you out of the immediate role of, the broader question is this next role going to help me get to ultimately where my destination is? And even if it's not, maybe there are 3 or 4 roles that you're interested in being. It's like me being an entrepreneur. I thought it might be something I would be interested in, but I did a lot of different things, and then I ended up there. And so it's the same thing. If you think you want to be a sales VP, all right. So what's the question? The question is, what are the experiences? What are the things that I need to do that will allow me to get there? And
Yeah.
that changes your mindset, because now all of a sudden you're not necessarily looking for the next move that might look like the previous role that you were in. Yeah, it's going to pay you some more money, but it may get in the way of you getting that promotion, or making that opportunity, because there are some other roles that you needed to get depth around, experiences and those type of things. So I think those two pieces are important. And then I think the last piece is around this networking and building your relationship, and talking to people and letting people know what you think you might want to do, or just having conversations with people. There's a guy that was on my team. We went to a conference, and Keith Ferrazzi wrote a book.
Yep, never eat
Yeah,
alone.
Never Eat
Never eat
Alone.
alone. One of
And
my
so,
favorites.
yes, so he took that to heart. And I had brought him into the organization as a contractor. And we had been at another company together, and he had made a decision that he was not going to wait in line anymore. And so I gave him opportunities. And there were a lot of people within the organization that they would fight him tooth and nail. I don't remember what his role is now. I think he's either executive director or something like that. So that was he worked for me 2015, 16. So in the last 10 years, his career significantly accelerated. I think he was a senior manager at the time. And so from that time period to up to now, because he made a decision, I wasn't going to wait in line anymore. I'm going to meet with people that generally people don't want to meet with, senior VPs, uh, general managers, folks that most people think, I'm not going to meet with them. I have nothing to share. I have nothing to offer. Building relationships with people, building a network helped accelerate his career significantly. So I think if people can focus in those three areas of know yourself, think about what your long-term goals, where you think you might want to land, and then continually build your network. And Simone, one other quick point about that, part of your network has to be broader than just your industry. You know, if you go on LinkedIn, oftentimes you're looking, the only people that you know are people that work at your company. Get to know some people that aren't in your company. Get to know some people outside your industry. Get to know some people that are entrepreneurs that do different things, are in different walks of life, because that will, you know, 6 degrees of separation is how that saying goes.
Yeah.
The more people that you know and have relationships with, the more it's going to serve you.
Yeah, there was so much there. I had to start taking notes. I didn't want to interrupt you, and I was like, "Oh, that's a good point. Let me jot that down so I don't forget." You said so many good things. So let's go back to the first thing that you said about your know thyself and th be okay with being different. Really appreciating your unique identities. It made me think about how when you are your authentic or unique self, sometimes the reception to that is not the best. And so you get into that mindset that you need to change yourself to assimilate or to fit in or to get better results, because that unique you, I mean, it maybe 2020 the rules changed and there was more of a door opener for the unique you, but in general, and I have a lengthy body of career experience, that can be challenging. So you really got me thinking, and I'm glad that you said that, because own it. Own it. Own who you are and your authenticity, even if there isn't reception for who you are yet. Or perhaps you're not in the right environment and you may need to move your environment so that the authentic you belongs or has a place there. So I thought that was a really good point that you brought up.
You know, a little bit more about that too, because I think part of it is that the reason people don't want you to be your unique self is because oftentimes people are threatened and are jealous. So part of it is the human condition of humans being humans. And part of it is you learning how to navigate through that. I'm listening to this book called Unspoken. I think it's Ella Fitzgerald.
Hmm.
We're doing a book club through the National Sales Network, and I just started. I think we have our first session today. So she talks about this whole piece, and you know, I reflected upon my career, because there are times where you try to fit in and try to be, you know, a part of the crowd. The broader question is, how do I be my unique self in a way and you're not going to always be accepted, but part of it is that in some organizations you fit from a cultural standpoint, depending on where you're working. Some people are always going to push back. Everybody's just not going to like you.
That's right.
It's just how it
Tell that to my
is.
10-year-old. My 10-year-old self didn't know that either. Like, everybody's not going to like you or be your best friend. So, yeah. And then the other thing that you said, Keith, was knowing where you want to go. And I'm just reflecting. The show is not about my journey. This interview, but it's a win-win. It's a win-win. But I remember dreading people asking me, "Where do you want to be in 5 years?" Like, shit. Oh, excuse me. I'm like, I don't know. I didn't know. I didn't give my career. I'm gonna have to put like R-rated for this episode. My apologies, audience. I'm having such a good time with Keith. I'm forgetting myself. So my apologies here. But the point was that I didn't know. And so I went along with what other people's vision was for me. She would be good at that. She would be good. And then I got to a place where I was like, I don't know where I am. Like, this is not what I want. So it's really important. And I love that you talked about setting the goals. And I go to that 5-year question. You have to have a clue what you want. Otherwise, you can get comfortable being in the passenger seat and moving along, and then wind up at a place where you're saying to yourself, I don't know how I got here.
Yeah, that's so
Got me
true.
amped up.
It's but it's life's big question. What should I be doing with my life? And everybody struggles with it. And I think there's one question people can ask themselves is, if I don't know, if I did know, what might that look like? Or what do I think I might be interested in? So it's not that you don't know that's the issue. Go back to the networking part, it's the beginning to have the conversations with people to do some level of exploration of what that might look like so that you can have a basis of understanding of what that might be and what those experiences might be. And then you could try a little bit of this and a little bit of that. My whole thing is if you don't like it, go do something else.
Yeah.
We hang out and we wait too long before we make
Yep.
decisions.
Yep.
Our gut tells us
Yep.
it's time for you to go find something else to do because you don't fit in this culture, you don't fit in this organization. But
Yep.
because of safety, we oftentimes, we go back to comfort. We do what is that? How does that saying go? The fear of loss is greater than the fear of gain.
Yep.
That's what we divert to. We go
Mm.
with what we know.
I'm thinking of Maslow's hierarchy and that safety, the importance of that. So talk to me, Keith, about the resources that really helped you to make those game-changing moves in your career. What was most helpful? What are some resources you can recommend to the audience?
Yeah, so these are some of them are personal. So the first one, which is and I can tie these together. So I was what they call a JMO, junior military officer, when I transitioned out of the military. So I went through a program called through Cameron Brooks, who recruits junior military officers, and he had this book called PCS Corporate America. And so I learned the basis of interview questions, everything you needed to know about interviewing skills and those things. So for me, that developmental program, understanding the business world, all of those things was key. One of the guys that I work with started his own company, and he has a podcast called Manager Tools. It's two podcasts, Manager Tools and Career Tools. So anything you need to know about managing your career, being a manager, I call it God's gift to management. Those podcasts are excellent. So those are a couple of resources that I have used over the years. And then there's a book, I believe it's called The Long View by Brian Federsaw. It's a great book because it challenges your thought process about your career because we oftentimes when we think about careers, we're really only thinking about the next role,
Yep.
not the next 25, 30, 35 years, what those experiences might look like. So that book sets the stage for that. Um, so I would say that those are some key pieces. I think a piece that is important that we don't embrace enough is your own personal self-development.
Hmm.
When I talked about earlier, knowing yourself, that self-development, what I found, at least for me, is that there's a direct correlation between the amount of time that I spent working on me and being better and the type of results that I've gotten. Even as an entrepreneur, buckling down, studying, trying to learn stuff, has gone a long way in making me more effective as an entrepreneur. So there's a cause and effect relationship with that, and I would just encourage people to be lifelong learners. There's more content and information available than ever. You don't necessarily need to read all the time anymore. There's Audible, there's LinkedIn Learning, there's tons of courses and things. There are podcasts. There's Chat GBT. You can sit down and
Yeah,
have a
I'm
great
glad you brought up
conversation.
AI. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
AI
Spend
is
some time
available.
there. It'll
Yeah.
provide a lot of information. So I would say that those are things that those are things that will help people be successful.
Thank you. I have truly enjoyed our conversation, if you couldn't tell. Maybe I may have to invite you back. Yes. So, as we begin to wrap up, tell our audience how they can stay connected with you, Keith, if they'd like to do so.
So yeah, a couple of pieces. If you want to interested in my corporate work, core management training, my website coremanagementtraining.com. I am also working on a resource. It's called Never Look for a Job Again. I bought the domain. If
Nice.
you type in Never Look for a Job Again, I put together a career development guide. has a lot of different tools, has questions and things for you to fill in to think about your career. So it's a tool that I've used when coaching folks, and folks have gotten great results. So if people want to go out and look at that tool, I'm gonna build a course off of that, take some of the lessons that I learned transitioning from the military and into corporate, and some of the lessons all together in a piece that can be something that will be useful for people. So those will be the two spots, the landing page as well as coremanagementtraining.com.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, we'll be sure to add that to the show notes as well. Keith Willis, it's been a pleasure to have you on the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. I thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Simone. Enjoyed being here.
Awesome.
That's it for today's empowering episode. I'm Simone E. Morris, and I want you to remember that you are indeed the architect of your career. Share this episode if it sparked something in you. Subscribe wherever you listen, and find more resources at SimoneMorrisEnterprises.org. Keep practicing career ownership, and I'll be right here with you next week for more transformation.